Dare to dream a bigger dream.
So, thank you for joining us. My name is Kim Eichhoff. I am a business coach, and I am doing this series I'm calling Dare to Dream video series, mostly just to get to know various entrepreneurs and small business owners and then kind of highlight their path to their business and how they've kind of found their journey up until now. And right now we are in the middle of this weird time, this pandemic time. And so I thought it might be a good opportunity to talk to people that maybe aren't always, or maybe are always very busy and maybe now aren't so busy. However, my guest today, Shawn, has been busy up until, I think you said recently it's slowing down a little bit, but why don't you tell everybody what you do and maybe a little bit about how you got into what you do? How'd you come up with it?
Yeah, so my name is Shawn Beltran. I own a company called Kraft Media, and we specialize in architectural photography. And a lot of our business comes from the real estate market, which is part of why we have still been busy. But that's kind of changed as of the last really 48 hours now that some of the local realtor organizations in the state have figured out that the Attorney General is actually interpreting the stay-at-home orders to mean that marketing in real estate that takes place in person of any form, including photography, video, and 3D tours, is not to happen. So that's actually an email that I had to send out late last night to my clients that said, you know, for now, we're going to have to dial it back and find some other ways that we can help you market your listings and get those things moving forward. So I'll probably talk a little bit about that later, how we've kind of, to use the buzzword, how we've pivoted that part of the business to still serve those clients. But the company itself specializes in architectural photography, which encompasses not only real estate, but also construction projects, custom builders. We have a great book of clients of custom home builders that are building mid-century, or not mid-century, but modern, kind of like an urban modern style of architecture. And sorry, my stuff's up here. Finishing up a couple of projects that are getting sent out, and I'm getting stuff from people. Anyway, so we also work with contractors and things like that. So there may still be some opportunities to continue a little bit of work with the construction industry, since that's definitely a critical industry into houses. Yeah. And wrapping up, because we have a lot of my clients have pre-sold builds that have to get finished and wrapped up because people are waiting to move into those homes. So really trying to find a way to help those people that are in those situations where they've sold their house, essentially, they just haven't closed on it yet, but now where do we go? And that's kind of the struggle that realtors are having now too. So I have a kind of a long history of how I got into my industry. I grew up around photography. My mom's favorite picture of me as a kid was when I was 3 years old, playing with an old film camera, trying to figure out how to make it work. And when I was from about 10 to 12, I was able to hang out after school at a studio that was a photographer's studio in Venice, California, that she was managing the studio for the photographer. So that was how I got into the actual craft of it and learning, and had a really cool experience. I was 11 years old and published in the LA Times for one of the photos that I took through that studio, which was really kind of
neat. Wow.
That should be up on the wall behind me, but it's not. I've still got the clipping and the original photo and haven't taking the time to put it in a frame, so maybe that'll be one of my projects for this next couple of weeks while we're
it's a good project.
It's speaks to the roots of where I got started, and through that studio I met my mentor, who is still an active photographer out in Las Vegas that is shooting mostly food but also some fashion work for the casinos. And he was kind of a mentor to me when I was younger, and he was a guy, his name's Peter Harristy. He's really, really cool style of photography for food work. And he got started through the Navy in the Naval Journalism program, went through the Navy, used the GI Bill to go to Brooks Institute of Photography in Santa Barbara, California. So that's how I learned about a school that really had a strong photography program that was geared towards helping people build a business around photography and not just learning the artistic side of it, and really learning all of the technical aspects and being able to kind of work in any style or any industry with photography. So that's where I went to school eventually, and went through that program and came out in 2000, late 2007, late 2008, or early 2008, and didn't really want to leave Santa Barbara because it was a really cool place to live, but needed to work, and there was no work for photographers because there were so many students doing all the work for free. So I got into the service industry and managed a coffee shop down on State Street in Santa Barbara for several years, and that kind of gave me corporate knowledge of how to run a business and read a profit and loss statement and all those things that are really critical in running a business properly. And I took that with me for about 5 or 6 years and transitioned through the coffee company, and then worked for Hilton for a while. Moved here to Denver, ran a few restaurants here in Denver, and finally decided that it was time to go back to what I really love doing. So I set up the business again here in Denver, and have been going full time since late 2015.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what gave you, because a lot of us, have jobs, right? And then we're making decent money, and it becomes hard to then shift and say, I'm going to take a risk and leave that's somewhat stable, and start my own thing. So what do you think it was within you that motivated you to do that?
I grew up around it a little bit. My mom, before she was running that photography studio, she ran a concession business out of the Beverly Hilton Hotel, which is where my parents met. And there's a long line of, or long history of hospitality work in my family. And that kind of started it for me, because she was definitely the entrepreneur in the family, and the work ethic kind of came from my dad's side as well, because he was, I'm first generation Mexican American. He immigrated from Mexico in the late 60s and worked his way up from the bottom the right way, and really was one of the only people that he moved here with that ever fully embraced the language and fully embraced the culture, and was able to make a really good life for himself working up in that hospitality industry. But they happened to meet in the Beverly Hilton Hotel, which is where my mom was running the concession business, which was essentially the coat check business. So she was.
But that was her own business within the hotel.
Right. Yeah. So she essentially, the way it worked was she had the concession for the coat rooms that were next to the 2 big ballrooms where events were happening in the Beverly Hilton Hotel. And in those years, that was when both the Oscars and the Golden Globes were being held in that hotel.
Oh, wow.
So as a kid, I got to grow up under the coat check door, underneath the table that had all of the cigarettes and gum on it, and watch the fur coats go by. And every once in a while, when somebody that was a celebrity or a producer would come by that she happened to know on a first name basis, if there weren't too many people around, I would get to pop up and say hi and meet these people. So it was an interesting experience growing up that way in that industry and around the industry. So she was kind of the entrepreneurial spirit that I had the most influence from running those coat rooms.
So you think then seeing her do it and be successful at it, along with kind of your dad's work ethic, you knew on some level you could figure out how to make it work, or you could figure out how to make a living doing it? That gave you more hope in it or faith in it, I guess?
Yeah, I don't even know if it's a matter of like knowing that I could figure out how to do it. It seemed like it was the natural thing to do.
Yeah.
Because it was less of a, let me figure out how to make this work, as opposed to, I know this works. So what do I want to do with it?
Okay.
And that was kind of the approach that I've always had with it. Whether I was running coffee shops for somebody else or my own business, it was, I know this formula works. I know this whole thing can work. There's lots of successful businesses out there as long as I apply the right principles and love what I'm doing. And that's really ultimately how I ended up where I am. Because as much as I liked the service industry and love coffee in that business, I wasn't building it for myself. So that was the big for that.
Yeah. So you then saw an opportunity. How did you pick? Well, let me ask this question first. It sounds like from the very get-go, because a lot of people who are photographers or some sort of artists, right, don't think of themselves as a business person and don't necessarily do well because they're not thinking of it as a business. So it sounds like from the very beginning, you did. You knew you had to have business skills, or you had to understand how to run a business to make it work.
I think it's a combination of things, because there's definitely a fine line for a lot of creative mindset people, whether it's photography or fine art or other medium, uh, of where do I let go of my artistic control and run a business. And I think I've been able to find the balance in that. And for me, that's part of the puzzle that I enjoy figuring out, is how do I make it so that I can put a system in place that's repeatable so that a business can actually scale like a business should, as opposed to a hobby or a craft or a solopreneur endeavor, because that's not what I want it to be. I don't want it to be a solopreneur endeavor, because what I did love about the service industry was the team aspect. So I want to have the team of people around me that are all doing their part and making the business better because of it, and hopefully making the living that they want and building the lives that they want out of that as well. So there's a balance between how do I let go and relinquish the control of the creative side of it that my artistic brain is saying, this is mine, this is my baby, and I want this to work the way I want it to, and move towards how do I build this so that I'm not spending 80 hours a week doing this all by myself to make it all work. And that's been the journey of the last probably 3 years out of 5 that we've been in business.
As you've become more successful, you're able to do that more. It's like, how do I let go, have other people involved, but then keep the same vision, right? And the same consistency as far as the quality of your product. I'm guessing it has to be consistent. So you must have to put certain things in place.
Right. It does really come down to who do you have around you that is following the same vision and is ready to work at following the same vision of, here's where the quality has to be.
Right.
And we're not going to let it go any lower than that. But at the same time, like, we need the quality of life to be there too. So making that balance happen takes more than one person, for sure.
Absolutely. Okay. Very cool. So how did you pick the architecture world, and how did you end up in this space that you're in right now?
It's a visual puzzle. Like, every time you sit down and set up the camera, you are working a visual puzzle with the camera, and that's the part of anything that I do that I find really, really interesting and fun. And it's like I'm almost interested to find out and wear a heart rate monitor and a blood pressure monitor when I'm working, and see how much my blood pressure and my heart rate drop when I'm actually working the camera versus when I'm dealing with fielding phone calls and scheduling and driving and all of those other things. Because I feel this like sense of relaxation, and just I get into my groove, and it just is a totally different vibe when I'm working the camera and doing that, because it's that visual puzzle, and that's what I love doing. I've worked with people in the past, and it's fun and rewarding in a very, very different way, but it doesn't have as much of the actual like brain stimulating puzzle part to me as architecture does. So
it sounds like you've really found your purpose with the camera, with your photography, doing the work that you're doing. Because that sounds like when athletes describe being in the zone, right? Just completely present, time disappears, and they're just like in it. That's what it sounds like. Is that kind of what you're describing?
Absolutely. Yeah. It took probably a solid year for me to figure out exactly how much time I need to set in the calendar and tell my clients to expect for each shoot, because I had that mental expectation of, I can get that done in 45 minutes. And then an hour and a half goes by, and I realize, oh, that took twice as long as I thought it was going to take. But it felt like 15 minutes to me.
Right.
So it was definitely a learning curve in that sense of, okay, we really need to figure out what the schedule needs to look like in order to optimize that, and not have people expecting to get back into their spaces an hour later when it's really going to be 2. Or vice versa of, I think this is going to take me 3 hours to shoot, and I get there and it just flows and everything happens in an hour and a half. And sometimes that happens, but it's been a fine-tuning process of how to do it the right way and actually estimate the time properly. Because how
do you think your kind of, when you translate, like doing this work that it sounds like you love to do so much, that's perfect for what you do and for who you are, how much, or how can you see how that affects the rest of your life? Like, when you were doing other jobs that weren't this, or even other photography that wasn't this, do you feel happier now? Like, what's the emotional payoff for following your heart and finding this thing that's kind of your zone, your purpose?
I think I think my wife would be a better person to answer that question because she's seen me. We met in Santa Barbara when I was in the coffee business, and she's seen me work through my entire journey in the service industry and eventually hit burnout, like a lot of people do, and then come into what I really want to do. And in the middle there, we had about a year and a half where we were both miserable trying to build a business with somebody else that was absolutely not what we wanted to be doing, but it sounded like a great investment at the time. And it turned out to be, the business is still in business, but I think we would probably both be completely gray and half dead if we had stayed in it for the last 5 years. But I can tell you that when I was in the service industry and really, really frustrated trying to run a restaurant for an owner that was an absolute tyrant to work for, I hated my life.
Yeah.
It was the worst experience I've ever had to work for somebody that had absolutely no regard for the people that were trying to make him a lot of money.
Right.
And that were trying to make money for other people and serve people in a way that was enjoyable and rewarding for people to come into the business. And ultimately it was a combination of that work experience and just time away from my passion that drove me to really do this full time.
It was like, I got to do this because I'm miserable otherwise, and life is too short, right?
Yeah, I think it's, following your passion or following your dream definitely has an ability to make you feel like more of a human being and less of a zombie working for somebody else or grinding out, trying to make somebody else money and just live paycheck to paycheck. But that doesn't mean it doesn't come with its own stresses that are also sometimes seemingly unsurmountable that you have to work through and figure out how to manage on their own. It has its own challenges for sure. I think my wife and I had a conversation in the last week about how much or how little I'm able to shut my brain off from work, even when we're home.
Yeah.
And it's tough because I get constant, notifications about something that's going on with the business, whether it's a client email coming in for a request for something, or somebody finishing up a project and I need to have eyes on it and before it goes out. So there's definitely a way that we're working through of how do we balance that so that there's time away from the business, even though the business is constantly in my head.
Absolutely. Well, and so that brings up a good point because I think you're, obviously totally right. It's not a lot of people who have this idea, I'm going to start my own business. It's going to be great. I'm going to be able to make my schedule and, all this stuff. And they don't understand. Nobody really understands what it's like until you're in it. And that, yes, there are amazing rewards if you do it right? Like you've done. Financial rewards, time rewards, all that stuff, passion rewards. But then you're right, there's all these other stressors that you have to deal with that if you had just a normal job, you don't necessarily have to deal with. So have there been times in the past, and then I'm going to talk about what's happening now in our world, but in the past, have there been days when especially when you first started, maybe it wasn't going as quickly as you wanted it to or growing as quickly and you weren't making the money yet as much? Were there days where you're just like, why am I doing this? Why don't I just go back and get a job? Because I certainly could, but you didn't do that. It's like, what was that like? And then what made you keep going? How did you know it was what you needed to do?
That's tremendously frustrating. And it does happen. And if anybody that has started a business from the ground up tells you that they didn't go through that, they had a lot of money when they started. It's like the old saying in the restaurant business, how do you build $1 million a year restaurant? Start with $2 million. So, if you don't go through those struggles, you were probably set up financially to start with. It's just kind of the reality of it. You will struggle starting a business no matter what. I think there's two parts to that I can speak to from my own experience. One is that the idea of going back to, well, I guess three. One is the idea of going back to working for somebody else and growing somebody else's dream instead of growing mine seems like I gave up. And that's not always the case. Sometimes some people will be in a position where you absolutely have to go back to work. Sometimes it's because of medical benefits and not being able to spend $300, $400, $500 a month for one person or $1,000 to $1,500 a month on medical insurance for one family. that alone can be an insurmountable goal when you look at companies like my wife's company. She pays under $200 a month for coverage that's better than what I can get if I spend $900 a month.
Right.
So there's definitely some circumstances where working for another company might be the right answer. But for me, it felt like I was giving up on my dream if I was going to go build somebody else's float. So I've found a way through my client base to build other people's dreams by helping them build their dreams, which in turn builds mine. So helping my clients serve their clients is giving me the opportunity to do both. It's a little bit of philanthropy in a sense of I'm helping somebody else build their dream.
Yeah.
But I'm sure much like you, right? You're helping other people build their dreams, but at the same time, it's helping you build what you want to build. Right. There's another piece of that is, just the time aspect, right? So if I went back to work for somebody else and the times, and I think this thought goes through my head just about every winter, because winters are slow season. There's not a lot of real estate moving. There's a few builder projects, but most things are wrapping up between March and October. So from November through February, it tends to be fairly slow for us compared to the busy months. But I look at the time and go, okay, so seasonally, what can I do? I love food, so I've thought about maybe I'll go work as a seasonal worker at like Williams-Sonoma or Sur La Table in one of those places and just kind of have fun around some foodie things. And inevitably, every time I think about it and go, maybe I'll fill out that application, because at least it would be fun to have something to do a few days a week when I'm not quite as busy. And it would give me a few hours out of the house doing something different. Inevitably, every single time I'll get a client request or 3 or 4 or 5 that is, like salary value to me worth a month's worth of work in a place like that. Right. And then I go, okay, so why would I go when the business is obviously at a point where it can support in a different way the financial need, even on a different scale, it's still more than what I would make as an hourly employee somewhere working part-time. So why take time away from either home life or business function to work for somebody else for less money? Yeah. So those have kind of been my 2 deciding factors that were the biggest deciders, or the biggest drivers as to why I don't, or I've never stopped and given up and said, okay, I'm going to go back to the employment life.
Yeah. Do you feel like, because one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, just with all the business owners that I do work with right now, there's this resiliency that so many entrepreneurs have, and obviously you have to have it during times before what's happening, right? I mean, you were just talking about on those slow times of the year, how do I keep going? What's kind of my motivation? And what I'm wondering about is there will be a lot of small businesses that don't make it out of this time for sure, but there's going to be a lot that, and I'm guessing that the people who are running those businesses will start something new at some point. Majority, I would guess. Some probably won't. But do you feel like kind of the stuff you've already been through has sort of prepared you in a way for what's happening now? Because I'm hearing a lot of people trying to figure out how to pivot and stuff like that, but there's not a lot of just giving up. I'm not hearing that. Even if your business is totally dead right now, there's people just not giving up. So tell me a little bit about that. Do you feel like in some way it's prepared you, in some weird way it's prepared you for this? And I know you've been busy and it's maybe starting to slow a little bit, so maybe you're not totally there, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's, I think past years of dealing with the slowdown in the winter months has definitely helped prepare me personally for how to get through a couple of months of slow time. It's a little bit of a bummer that this slow time came right after the winter period, so we never really got our spring ramp up that we would normally get. But it's still, maybe I'm unique in this particular instance, but I've also been working at building the business in a way over the last about year and a half where to put it in financial terms, our average transaction has doubled while our actual revenue has stayed right around an 8% growth from last year to this year. Nice. So it means that even though we've slowed down a little bit right now, the jobs that have come in over the last, say, 4 or 5 months, like the winter period when we were slow, all of those jobs have been worth more financially to the business than the same number of jobs would have been 2 years ago.
Gotcha.
So it's definitely been diligent work as to how do we make the value that we're bringing to our clients worth more financially, and how do we find the clients also that are willing to pay more for the same type of service with a little more value added, in order to grow the business in a way where we don't need to be working as hard or as much in order to make the same amount of money.
I love that. So you've consciously made that. Before this ever happened, that was your intention. Like, how do I make those winter months a little bit more bearable to increase my average dollar sale, essentially, right? Yeah. And work less, but still make about the same or even more. It sounds like 8% more. And so now that this has happened for you, it's not that scary or as scary as it could have been, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely not as scary as it would have been. If this had happened 3 years ago, let's say 3 summers ago, I was spending my entire day from sunup to sundown on the road, and I was in and out of anywhere between 3 and 6 houses a day to take photos for real estate listings, to make probably, let's say, $500 after all costs, taxes, everything, right? That was going to be potential
your profit
that I could take for myself out of that day. Now we have commercial clients that are architects, custom builders, clients that are outside of the real estate world, but still architectural photography clients, that see more value in the images that we create, because they're going to use that content to grow their business exponentially over a longer period of time, where like a real estate listing stays live in this city for 15 to 45 days. Then those photos are never looked at again. An architect is going to use our photos for 5 years. And they're going to market with those photos for 5 years until trends change, and then they're going to be looking for photos of new projects. Yeah. So that 5-year time period is worth more marketing dollars to pay to us to make content for them that's outstanding, versus a real estate agent that only needs that for a month on average. So instead of $500 a day, now we bill between $2,000 and $3,000 a day for a commercial job that's going to be 5 years worth of content marketing, essentially, for that architect.
Absolutely.
So, and that means one location. So I'm not spending all day on the road.
Right.
So there's all of
setting up, tearing down.
Yeah. It's set up and tear down once.
Very smart.
And drive to and from once for twice the revenue of driving around all day to get in and out of other people's homes all the time.
Right. Yeah, that's great. So you made a very conscious decision on, I want more commercial projects that we can charge more and make more per. Yeah, that's very smart.
Right.
Around that is another thing that I think I see a lot with my clients and even myself, is around pricing, right? So how did you, because what I hear a lot from entrepreneurs, or what I see a lot, especially early on in their businesses, that they undercharge for their services. Because like what you're doing is you're saying this architect is going to use these photos for a long period of time and make a bunch of money, right, off of these same photos over and over and over again. Whereas this real estate agent might just make money from this one-time transaction. So the value that your photos provide to the architect is so much greater, which makes sense. So the price should be greater because the return on investment is so much greater. So when you started doing that and kind of changing or refocusing that, did you have to do any work on yourself around your own value to charge more? Like, I see a lot of people scared to charge more, and mostly I think it's a value issue where they don't see the value in their work as much as they should. Did you have that issue or no, or kind of where was that?
Yeah, every creative person is going to have that issue, I think. It's kind of, it's human nature to not expect people to be comfortable paying you more than what you're already comfortable charging for a service. So figuring that out, it takes a combination of self-work, and it takes a combination of research and application of that research to your actual business model. For me, a lot of it was strictly financial analysis and looking at the market and looking at what other people are charging and looking at what my actual cost of doing business is.
Yeah.
And I've broken that down. There are countless numbers of CODB calculators on the internet that you can use to figure out what should I be charging. And what it comes down to is that's a very black and white way for anybody that's trying to price any service to figure out, okay, this is what I need to charge in order to get to where I want to be. So
Yeah.
for me, it was, I knew how many hours a week I wanted to be able to work because we want to start a family. And I don't think that my wife is ever going to want to not work in her industry either. So that means we're both going to be working. So we need to figure out how we're going to balance our time. So there's a lot of things that go into how much time do I want to work every week? And then of that time that I'm working, how many of those hours are billable hours? How much of that time is actually time spent working on things that I can charge for? And then you have to look at all of your costs. So breaking all of that down in an analytical fashion is also something that I enjoy doing, but it's something that can be done in a black and white way that will show people, anybody that's going to look at what to charge, this is what I need to break it up as, and this is how much I need to charge for each project that takes this amount of time in order to get to where I want to be. So
Right.
for a long time, I was I was charging what looked like fair market rates for what I was doing when I was only doing real estate work, and it's probably half of what we charge now. So we did start out undercharging for sure. When it was just me by myself, I was definitely undercharging. And a lot of those clients have stuck with me because they see the value in what we're doing and why we're charging more. And in turn, it's actually been a little bit of a blessing because we've lost the deal seekers, which for lack of, like, you don't really want to lose clients, but at the same time, why grind it out working as hard as possible for somebody that doesn't value you? They only value the price tag attached to your service. So we had to figure that out too, as a company, exactly where that was going to put the pricing. But that's been the journey with pricing. You have to know what it's going to cost you to do business the way you want to do it. So I would tell anybody, like, set the bar high. If you know you only want to work 20 hours a week, start there. If that's where you want to be 10 years from now, start with that model and see where you can get to, how you can get to that.
Yeah, and then it's about finding those customers that will pay that, right? So then targeting the right customers, and that's the biggest thing, because I like what you said, where you don't want to lose customers, but at the same time, what I see happen is as we raise our rates to where they should be from a value perspective, the ones that don't see your value as much disappear, but then more come in that do, right? And so then you end up working less and making more money, because maybe not as many people will pay those prices, but that's okay because you're making so much more per job, like you were talking about.
Right. If I can work the same, say, 3 hours for one client to make what I used to have to work 6 hours working for 2 clients, which is a better place to be.
Right. Absolutely. So what would you say then is kind of the advice you would give somebody like you who's starting out today? Maybe that's an artist of some sort, or some person with a creative idea, or creative person, they have a new idea. What's like the one piece of advice you would give that person?
Don't do work for free. Don't let somebody pay you with exposure. It's a losing proposition. That person is already undervaluing what you're doing. So that whole, oh, well, if I can get you on my blog, or if I can, get your work out with my name on it, it's going to be great for you. It's not. It's going to be great for them because they're getting work for free. You wouldn't go to a restaurant that just opened and ask the chef to make you lunch for free.
All right.
So don't let people make you work for free. You might have to undercharge for a while to get some experience. But honestly, rather than working for free, I would just say, find a mentor. Find somebody that is already working towards or has achieved the goal that you want, and offer your services to that person in exchange for experiential knowledge, because it's far more valuable to get the knowledge from somebody who's actually built that business the way you want to build yours than it is to take advice from somebody who doesn't want to pay you in the first place. So if you're going to do free work, that's the place to do it.
That's a great lesson or suggestion. I love that. I haven't really ever heard anybody say that before, but that's really great. I mean, you think about it, if you know you want to be at a certain level in life or whatever in your business, if you're hanging out with people that are at your level or below, that's not very helpful, right? But if you know somebody who's where you want to be and you're willing to, I don't know, donate time or help out in some way, but to learn as an exchange to learn, that's a great, and I don't know, just being around that kind of person will motivate you, I'm guessing, right?
It definitely will. And even, even like my mentor, when I worked with him, I was paid. So I think
Yeah.
even the better mentors out there are not going to make you work for free.
No.
So that's a whole other side of it too, is just, it's still not free work. Was I paid what he was making? We traveled all over the country and shot food and hotel suites for casinos. And he was billing, $30,000-$40,000 a week for that work, because he was covering all the cost of traveling, and there were several assistants and food stylists and things that were going on. But, I wasn't getting paid anywhere near that, but I was still paid. And when looking back on it, that was 15 years ago. And there are still people now that don't make what I was paid as an assistant to my mentor by working a full-time job. So finding the people that have built that business,
Yeah.
the way that you want to build yours, it does a whole different, it gives you a whole different experience and a whole different set of skills to play off of versus working cheap or working for free for people that don't want to pay good prices for good service in the first place.
Well, I mean, the theme I keep hearing with you, Shawn, is value, right? Like you didn't feel valued by that person who ran the coffee shop, and how he treated you as well as the other people there, it sounded like. And so it was like, I can't do this for very long. And then when you were talking about building your business, you want to create a space where other people can work with you, and then they could make a good living and stuff. So you're obviously showing your value or how much you value those people, right? And then your mentor valued you by paying. So for you, that sounds very important. And I think that's a really good lesson too, is like looking for the people that are willing to see your value, pay you for your value, and then you reciprocate that as you grow your business as well.
Yeah, it was the restaurants here in Denver. The coffee shop was great, but just
okay, sorry.
I know from to see that. My teams and coworkers in coffee were awesome, as was the company and my boss. But the idea of working for somebody that doesn't value you as a human is even worse.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I think a lot of people that are willing to go out and start their own business have probably felt that at some point.
Yeah.
Whether it's in business or just in life, there are a lot of people that have felt struggle by not being valued as a human being somewhere. And I feel like most of us probably have had that experience at some point. But getting past that is just going to make you stronger.
Yeah.
It's just go out there and be fiercely loyal to who you are, and know your value, figure out what you need to charge to share that value with the world, and then go express it. Expressing what you really know how to do and what you love doing. There's no greater reward than watching somebody else thrive because you're doing what you love doing.
Yeah.
There's no greater reward than that. Maybe kids, I don't know yet. We'll see. But I'm pretty sure that's kind of the same thing with kids, right? Like you love them
it probably
initially, and they thrive because of that, and that's the reward, right? But aside from the family aspect in business, when you're able to do what you love and other people are being successful because of that, that's awesome. And
well, it's sort of like your own kid, right? When you create a business, it's your own baby that you're raising, and then you're getting other people involved and stuff. But yeah, I totally agree. And the energy that you feel from those people who are doing what they love, it's palpable. You just know it. Mm-hmm. You said something early on in our conversation about, you started another business or were part of another business with another person that mm-hmm. you didn't like being a part of because right. of it wasn't the right fit. I think that's a really important lesson too, because I see a lot of business owners that just start a business for the money. They're just like, I'm just going to do this to make money. And usually it doesn't go as well as when you create something from a passion place, right? That you create a business from, this is something I'm passionate about. I want to express this. This is what my purpose is here. If I just do things for the money, it doesn't get very far normally. How about, do you agree with that, or?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there are definitely people that have started businesses for the money and been very successful at it. I don't know. I don't know that they're getting the same reward out of it.
Yeah.
On an existential level, maybe.
Yeah.
There's some people that are entirely motivated by money, and that's who I worked for in the restaurant industry.
Gotcha.
And when you're not that kind of person, it's hard to work for that kind of person.
Yeah.
So if there may be somebody out there that watches this that says, money is my motivation. That's the main reason why I want to do this. And that's fine if you surround yourself with other people that are also decision makers that are about the service.
Mm-hmm.
And know where that line is, and know where you need to step out for a little while and let somebody else take over.
Right.
Knowing your own strengths and weaknesses is also really, really important. And that's something that I also learned from the coffee business. We had two owners that were family-owned business, and one of them was the idea guy, and the other guy was the implementation guy. And the idea guy wanted to expand, to thousands of stores, and they started that path. And then when I came in, I started working for the company in 2008. So everything was already crashing, and they started closing stores and were reshuffling employees, and that not knowing where that line was of this person needs to take over now, and this person needs to step away and support this other person in the business. Living through that and working through that was tough, but ultimately the company worked through it, and we all worked through it, and it was okay. But if your main motivation is not following your passion, and it's following the paycheck or the money or the revenue stream, make sure you better have somebody else in that business that is about the passion, and empower that person to make the decisions that they should be making, so that your revenue stream can keep up with what you expect it to be, because it's going to take both things.
Right. Absolutely. And I'm a big believer that you can do what you love and make a good living doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You can figure it out. So, all right. I think those are all the questions I have. Do you want to let people know how they can find out about you or reach you, contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find us on our website is Spacecraft, spelled SPACEKRAFT.io. And we're also on social media at Spacecraft Media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Shawn. This has been great. I really appreciate your availability to share some of the more challenging parts of being an entrepreneur in a small business.
Sure.
And congrats. Yeah. And congrats on all your success. And I'm sure as we come out of this, things will be fine. Oh, one more question. You mentioned how you're pivoting. I was just curious what you're talking about. How you're trying to help your clients.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've learned early on about myself is that I love teaching people. So what I've started doing or offering to my clients as of today is to essentially coach their sellers, so the people that are selling a home, on how to get the best photos possible using whatever camera or phone they have available. Because we're really not supposed to be going in and out of homes right now, and the agent isn't supposed to go into the home and take those photos either. So really it should be whoever's already living in that home, assuming that it's occupied. If it's vacant, the agent I think is allowed to go do those, but we're not supposed to. So basically we're offering coaching to figure out how to get the best images, so we can do that using something like FaceTime live in the home, or probably Zoom on an iPad while you're also using your cell phone or another camera to figure out how to get the shot that you need. We can always edit those files and make them look better than they would look straight out of camera or straight out of the cell phone, so they look closer to what you would normally see on a listing. We still do all of the online marketing services that we've always offered, which is the single property websites, slideshows, and those kinds of things. And then we can also coach somebody how to make a 3D tour using only their cell phone and a couple of different platforms that we have access to. So you can still do a 3D virtual tour. It just won't be the same image quality that we can get with some of our equipment, but you can do it with a cell phone using a couple of different platforms. So we can coach people through that whole process. So you still have ways to market. Yeah,
very cool.
So you don't have to stop selling. You just have to stop having us come into the house to capture the media to sell. So.
Well, like you're saying, there are people that have sold houses and now need some place to go. I think, that's, yeah, that's not a good scenario. A bunch of people that are out of houses that can't get to something else. So
Yeah, it's a sticky situation for quite a few people where, they're supposed to close on their own home, but they need to sell the home that they're in now in order to qualify for the mortgage to get into the home. And you can talk to an agent and they'll tell you all the potential pitfalls of not being able to market a property right now. So anything we can do to help market that property without having to actually go out and do the work ourselves, we're willing to help coach people through and do it in a way that it's going to be affordable and not really hurt the revenue stream for anybody. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, congrats. That's so great. So I love about entrepreneurs, creative, new ideas. Keep on going.
Figure it out and we'll make it work, right?
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me and have a wonderful day. How about?
Awesome. Thanks, Kim.
So dare to love, dare to laugh. Take a stand, say yes to your path. Dare to shine, dare to fly. Make a scene. Dare to dream a bigger dream.